We need at our table of awareness the logician, but equally we need the intuitive, we need the mystic.
I almost died. I was allowed to go to the very precipice of death, of life and death, and look over the edge. And I was allowed to behold what was there and allowed to come back. Most people aren't.
When we talk about being aligned with ourself or being aligned with our soul or hearing our higher self, that's really what we're talking about, is being connected to that divine part of ourself, that light-filled part of us that is connected to God energy, that is connected to everybody here and every experience we've ever had.
If more doctors, more professionals can open up to use intuitive gifts in their work, that's really important.
Hi, I'm Dr. Amy Robbins, and welcome to Life, Death, and the Space Between. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist and medium, and here we explore life, death, mediumship, near-death experiences, consciousness, and what it all means. For the majority of this podcast, I talk about connecting with spirits after the human body dies. But what happens before these spirits come into carnation? And that is what today's episode with Kelly Meehan is about. Kelly is a healing visionary and author of Notes from a Spirit Baby Medium. She is the go-to for everything you need to know about spirit baby communication. She's a birth advocate, a holistic mother to 2 boys, and her work really focuses on communication with the baby, with the spirit energy before it comes into a physical body. So she understands this unseen world of spirit and how spirits decide what bodies they're going to come into, what families they're going to be in. And also I go into what happens when family is struggling with fertility and there's issues around conception, how a baby chooses, how it comes into the world, and some of the struggles that people face in terms of those issues and how spirit plays a role in those choices. So this is an episode that is really interesting. I've never quite gone down the road of pre-birth communication. So with that, I bring you today's episode with Kelly Meehan. Welcome, Kelly, to Life, Death, and the Space Between.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So spirit babies is a topic I think I touched on it a long time ago, but more in the context of indigo kids, which we'll get to later because I wanted to ask you about that. But let's start. I always like to start with your story of how you started connecting to these spirit babies.
So I'm one of those people that had abilities when they were younger. And I actually felt like puberty was a really shifting time of opening me up spiritually, psychically, energetically. And I started to just explore the world. And I always felt like I kind of feel like I grew up as a caretaker, you know, supporting my family in different things. And I started studying a little bit of like energy stuff. And then I realized that I kind of knew things. I thought I was highly visual, very imagery oriented. And I just thought that was normal. And then I went back to school for a little bit, like, what am I doing, into the psychology world? And then the baby stuff came through. I think it was like, honestly, the idea of pregnancy, birthing was like my biggest fear. And I'm not shy to like talk about that. It was a huge phobia, fear. And I'm like, this is unnatural. And like, if you would have told me I would have ended up in this space, like, you know, more than 20 years ago, I'd be like, no way. Like, there's no way. But I realized I had,
because mine, I think my phobia was death. And here I am.
Yeah.
So
yeah. It's like, because I came in with foundational trauma, like through birth, and that's a whole other like conversation. But I feel like
you had your own birth trauma.
No, like the way I was born in the world. And I'll just share that. Right. Yeah. So I was born as a non-labored cesarean breech. So that means I'm breech. And back in the 70s, they didn't let women vaginally deliver. And so I was also, when I say non-labored, I had no push and connection to know that I was coming into the world. And so my first moments in the world was traumatic, and my mom was mentally ill. and she had a lot of abuse. So I had all the, right. So, and then I'm looking at like because at one point I was like, what am I doing as a spirit baby medium is what I came up with that term. And I'm like, what is this? And then I'm looking at my own mother and infant story is like, it was so buried. So then later on, I started to realize I can sense, feel, know things. And then I started to sense people's babies and pregnancy. And I was like, am I just imagining this? That's what we say, right? And I would say the things. And then they were like, yeah, like that's right. And then I'm like, oh, because it felt almost too easy to feel that connection.
Well, the thing you describe in the book is this woman that was pregnant with twins who didn't know she was pregnant with twins. And you were like, it's a boy and a girl. And she had no idea. And sure enough, out comes a boy and a girl.
Yeah. And that was one of the big pieces to this work is like, it was one of the students and I put my hands on her because at that time I realized that when I touch people, I can really see and feel things. Now I don't have to touch people. I just hear their voice and just tune into their energy. And in that, I said, are you having a boy and a girl? And she was like, no. And she didn't do any medical intervention. She had a midwife at the time and they just never picked up a second baby. And so I said, I see a boy and a girl. And actually the thing I didn't add in is the babies were saying they're fixing her body and her pelvic floor. And she later told me that she had an accident and they moved it by being in her body and helped her repair it. And then she gave birth. She always thought she was having a boy. So she gave birth to her boy first, which makes a lot of sense energetically because that's what she was feeling. And then her girl came like after, and it was like, and then my friends were like, hey, like texting me like, oh, we have to send energy and love to her. And hey, don't you remember we were on this park and what you said? And then I had to sit in reflection with that because I was like, wow, it felt so normal to see that babies that way, that it just was like a fleeting thought or an idea that just, and then I realized that I can actually talk to the children and ask them things and learn more about them and what they're coming and, and how, what their life can or cannot be like. I can't give like the details of their future, but yeah.
So help me understand, at what point does the spirit or the soul, are you considering like spirit and soul
the same? Yeah.
The same? Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So at what point does the spirit of this baby come into the physical body? Oh, I have so many questions here. I'll start with question one.
Yeah. So what I feel like is when a woman is in pregnancy, the spirit is very multi-leveled. Like the spirit doesn't hang out in the body. It could be at grandma's house, with the dad, with the sibling,
the baby spirit,
the baby spirit. And it doesn't make, of course, any logical sense, which I know you understand.
Yeah.
And I do feel like once birth happens, actually, this world, this atmosphere, and this energetic space requires us to be more in our bodies. But we could be half in and half out. Infants, newborns, they are in and out. And we see this by people saying, oh my gosh, the baby's not breathing, which is not dangerous, by the way. There's this whole idea that there's so much danger in birth, but it's like they're in and out. And you could see it with a newborn. You can see them in between worlds for actually a few months. They're just traveling, but they're connected to their body unless they're actually leaving it, of course. So we can say that the baby gets more, the soul and the spirit get more connected once the physical, I almost feel like touching the air of breath. It's like being here because they can still be inside and in the watery world and they're still very multidimensionalness, right? So it's like, that's how I would explain it and see it.
So really certainly until they're born, but then up to like potentially 3 months.
Oh yeah.
They can be traveling between worlds.
Yeah.
Can
and
it
like
go
again,
longer than that? Like you hear of kids who say like, oh, my imaginary friend is over there. Like then they're embodied, but they're still connected to the spirit world.
Well, they're still tethered into their bodies. So they're not like, that you can definitely, a lot of people, even adults, have out of body and travel. But with the infant, again, like if you look at infants and you connect with them, you can see that they're not fully integrated here. And being here is really hard in an earth body, especially with wise souls, because they're like, they come from this big place and now they're like, have a diaper and they need their mom. And like, they're like, what's happening? And you can see it with some energy. Some children are very, you know, they fight it, or they're like very big, even though they're in this tiny little body.
Mm-hmm. So when you're communicating with them, what sort of information are you getting? Like, are they talking about, I'm coming in to help with this? and I guess, okay, I'm going to ask one question at a time. I tend to like get very ahead of myself. Just that question.
Okay. So, you know, I want to also share, there's a difference for me, a little bit of a difference between conception, fertility, and pregnancy.
Okay.
And when I'm doing like work with people over the years, when it's conception, the baby is a possibility, right? And I feel like there's certain energy questions that I like to go into, because I do work with a large population of infertility, whether naturally conceiving or intervention. And sometimes it's a very tricky, you know, there's so many reasons, like, and what we're doing to create and clear and restructure how you're building that connection. So I do things specifically in these different areas. So in conception, I'm really actually looking at those involved in bringing in this new earth child. I'm looking at their energy and where their energy is, because oftentimes, you know, it can be the baby's energy of like, you know, they're working on things with the family. But if I'm looking at pregnancy, I go and look at like, I don't want to say purpose, because that's such a big word, but like a mission. Like we all come in with a little bit of a mission, right? And then I'm looking at that energy. And more recently, I've seen more profound things coming up with children and their purposes more here. And it's really like blown me away. I'm like, I was like, oh, okay, that's really interesting. It's not what we think it is. It's not like, oh, I'm coming to hang out with mom and dad and have some ice cream. It's like, I'm here to restructure the earth grid. I'm here to create connection with other beings so we can build a better like reality. And, so it really depends. And so in pregnancy, it's more lighthearted in my space, where in conception, I'm making people like work deeper and I'm looking at things from a certain way. And so with pregnancy, yeah, it's more of like, you know, sometimes babies will say, I'll say, well, what does your mom need physically, you know, or your dad? Like, what do you need physically, emotionally, spiritually? And they're just so like, oh, you know, for example, mom she has a little knot and a little tension in her upper spine, and she needs to do something about that because it's going to make us all uncomfortable. Or, oh, I'm really loving the minerals, or I'm really loving the food that we're eating. And sometimes foods will be shared. And those are more fun, I feel like, and lighthearted. But we can go deeper into bigger missions and deeper, you know, lineages that are being restructured through certain family lines. And sometimes it has a lot to do with the partner. Like the father, if that's the partner, not always about the mother. That's, you know, but that's what mothers and women do. It's like, oh, it's all about me. It's my story. And I'm like, hey, if you're like in collaboration, even the siblings' energies will come up, whether on the other side or whether, you know, here in Earth Body. Like, it's quite fascinating, siblings. No one talks about that. It's like
siblings got the shaft in so many. They really do. And I think when we talk about grief and loss, siblings never, right? It's sort of like it's either like, if it's a child, how are the parents doing? Or if it's a spouse, how are the kids doing? Or a parent, or you know, mother. It's never about the sibling relationship. That's a soapbox for another time. But I'm so curious. Okay, so you have like a woman, let's take an example, who is trying to conceive. Let's say she's having a really hard time getting pregnant. What are you doing to help her? Like, are you going
I'm going into her field. I'm going into timelines. I'm going into the future a little bit, but no, I can't fully go into the far, far future because it's always changing. And so I'm really helping the individual, whether it's a woman or man, is to help them restructure their energy, to help them find, not looking at things perceived through the physical world, but through the energy world, because everything, as I've witnessed it, comes through the energy, and then the physical body takes over. So this is why people are like, I've had here, for example, like thyroid issues. I've had a lot of women say, no, my thyroid's fine. The doctor says it's okay. And I said, you know what? Liability wise, like you're going to be your own intuitive advocate. And I want you to check up on it. Like, be more assertive. Like, and I've had many women emailing me like, oh my gosh, it was the thyroid that had a different energy. And I had to go look at it, but it wasn't manifesting physically yet. So I said, this is good. So I look at that because to me, even though it's in the future, to me, it looks like it's very present. And that's always a tricky thing too. Cause like, is it here? Is it there? I was like, sometimes I'm not really sure. But for example, and so looking at the energy of reproduction, I hear it. I'm like, kind of like an X-ray machine at times. I could see like what's happening and see where the energy of emotion is. Is it connected? A lot of time, most of this stuff, if there is an infertility issue, it is connected to the past 100%, because in the wholeness of where we are now there is nothing wrong, but it's just the history that gets us. And it's very subconscious because it's very traumatic at times and it's very deep. And, you talk about loss. I call it my accidental expertise is infertility and miscarriage. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's a really big place when we embody death inside our bodies. Nobody talks about that. Mm-hmm. And I want to bring women to that space because they are changed after birth loss. Every woman is, and man, in that they're changed and they're scared that they're changed. They don't know what to do with it. And I think that's where I come in and connect them with their babies where,
the babies who have died.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And talk about siblings, especially with stillbirth and infancy loss, the siblings come right in and they're like, they'll tell me like, even really specifically, oh, my brother's coming, my sister's coming. And I'm not like, 100% when it comes to just me, but when I ask the children, I always trust them and they're always very accurate about it. And because they're connected, right? They're connected and yeah, we don't talk about that. Nobody, but I've sat with so many women and bringing in this energy and this bereavement space and listening, and the children and the siblings, they have this connection. And something recently just happened and I thought it was really beautiful. She's a earth child. I call them earth children, if they're earth side or not embodied. Earth side. Yeah. Embodied. Yeah. So earth side children. And she said she wanted to know, she's in pregnancy, how her baby was talking to her earth daughter. And I said, oh, well, he's working with her. I think it was he or she's working with her, drawing pictures of rainbows, like a lot. And I'm just like letting it go. And she's like, oh my gosh, in the past few weeks, all my daughter does is draw rainbow pictures. I'm like, that's just her brother. They're like having a connection. It doesn't look the way maybe we think it needs to, because children just feel energy. They're not judging it. They're like, right.
They're not like, why am I feeling like I need to draw rainbows?
Yeah.
Right? They're just drawing rainbows. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then so it was like a really beautiful experience that this came through, because it's like, it was just showing me something too. I was like, oh my gosh, like we always forget, like there's a sibling energy, whether they're earth side or whether they're in between worlds. And this is why many people can have more than one spirit baby energy with them. It does happen.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Well, there can be not just in death, but there can be ones that are ready to come in, or like I've seen like, oh, there's 3 baby energies. What's that about? Or there's 4 or there's 1 or there's 2. I was like, but and sometimes I'm like, I have to like, okay, who's going to talk? How are we going to do this? Because it can be like, what's going on? And then some babies will sneak in later. I tell people like, not all the babies will show up at once. The one that shows up is the one that wants to do the work with you. And so receive that. You may have a son and you may like, I feel this boy. He may be preparing the space for his sister, right? Like we can't, It's so, I've seen that. Yeah.
I think I've shared this before, but not before with you, before on my podcast, but it was really when I was like at the way beginning of exploring this. I had just had my second child, and all of this medium stuff was coming up for me. I was starting to have a lot of these experiences. Loved ones are coming to visit, all kinds of stuff. And when I wanted to kind of get a grasp on it, I started working with a medium. And before I even started working with her, I didn't tell her that this was happening to me. I went for a reading because I wanted to see, if she was legit. And in the reading, she was legit. A lot of really accurate stuff came up. but she told me, you have 2 souls waiting to be born. And at the time I had already had 2 kids, and I was really on the fence about if I wanted a third, but I knew I was never having a 4th. And she said, these souls are waiting. There's 2 more that are waiting to be born. I, years later, got pregnant, and I ended up having a miscarriage. And when I had the miscarriage, I was like, oh, okay. Like it actually helped me tremendously, because I remembered back to that time where she said to me, there's 2 souls waiting. And me knowing that I knew in my heart, like I would never have 4 kids. And so it was like, oh, that was just what had happened. And it did. I mean, I still grieved and I was still really sad, of course, but I was also hopeful because I knew. And then I got pregnant shortly thereafter, once like I allowed some time for my body to heal. And now I have my adorable little now 11-year-old. So, but it was just always very interesting to me that she picked up on those 2 souls that were waiting, and things happened like they did.
And that's the tricky part. I know some people will say, okay, there's souls, but does that mean they're coming into this world, right? Mm-hmm. That's a big one. And it's like, sometimes there are deeper answers that we have to do personally in the journey to see. And some people will ask me, do you see miscarriage? Sometimes I do. Do I tell people no? Because I feel like anything's possible to change. I'm like, it could change. We are so in such a powerful time right now that the reality and energies are shifting so massively. And I felt it like in 2019, I felt like, oh, things were really changing, and how I even perceived the world, how I connected with baby energies. Things started really, I was like, oh, what's happening? And that's actually, by the way, in 2019, I felt like I had to get everything done. And I studied death midwifery, and I took this whole course on it. And with Olivia Barkham, who does like the most incredible, amazing home funeral, like in California. And I learned about how to prepare a body, like all this stuff. And I remember just feeling like, just to add to the space I'm in, and just, death. I mean, and
right. I mean, they're 2 sides of really the same coin, right? Birth and death.
And that's the energy that I like to bring up a lot, because I've sat in Death Cafe recently, and I realized that people don't bring in the birth ever. And I'm like, what is that? It makes me really curious. Even when I took this training with all these kinds of people, men and women, I brought in the birth conversation, and I was like, And I feel like we're birthed into this world, we're crying, and it's super intense. And when we are birthing ourselves out of this world, and it can be really intense and may not look as pretty, like it's intense, but nobody, it's just, there's so much mystery in that. Right. And I'm always like wanting to,
the entrance isn't so pretty either. And
it's not.
And like, I mean, in a lot of ways, we like intense. Really not glorify it, but it's such a beautiful thing to bring a life into the world. And so like all the mess that comes along with that, and like the primal experience of birthing a child gets like kind of, I don't know, swept under the rug. Whereas with death, I feel like we don't give it reverence, like in any way. It's like something that like maybe in the same, I mean, there's similarities, right? They both kind of happen in a hospital. Now people are starting to try to have more home births, try to have more home deaths. But typically we've like totally medicalized these experiences. And so we've lost the reverence of what they mean from a spiritual perspective. One of the questions I get the most often is, can you refer me to a spiritual therapist? And my question back is, what does that mean to you? And people often respond with someone who's familiar with mediumship, near-death experiences, what happens after we die. Maybe they know astrology or numerology. And so I created what seems like isn't out there, a course for therapists to learn about spiritually informed therapy. My course starts June 16th. It's going to be every Monday from 12 to 1:30. And it is specifically for therapists. So if you are a master's level therapist, unfortunately, anybody can take it, but master's level therapists can get continuing education credits for it. There'll be 10 and a half continuing education credits. We'll meet for 7 weeks and we'll discuss things like the neuroscience of spirituality, spiritually transformative experiences, spiritual techniques that you might want to think about integrating into your clinical work, spiritual bypassing, spiritual emergence, spiritual emergencies, Jung, signs, synchronicities, the ethics and cultural implications of spirituality. I am so excited to be able to bring this course to you. I feel like it is exactly what is needed right now. And I feel like I have finally found my home in this space. So if you want to join me, check out my website, dramyrobbins.com. There'll either be a waitlist or a link to sign up for the course. We're still working on some of the details of that, but if at the very least get on the waitlist or sign up for the course now, there will be early bird discounts available to you. So make sure you get on my email list as soon as possible. I am so excited to be training the next level of therapists in this space. So I look forward to seeing you there.
Absolutely. I mean, that's huge. And I was just sitting and sharing this conversation, how when my dad passed away very quickly and he was fine and then he wasn't. And I actually left the state and I said to my younger brother, I said, just so you know, we're going to watch him die because, people check out and he, just by sharing the stories, I felt like he was watching what I would say is my dad birthing himself, laboring himself into death. And it was not pretty at all. Right. I mean, it's intense, especially if somebody refuses all medical care and they want to be home. And it's just like they've given whatever that is. And it's like, I was like, we don't say that we're literally laboring and birthing into death. And I know it's different if it's this shock trauma death, maybe it's different, but more of this longer death. And I'd have to sit with that because if it's shock and trauma and then you're out of your body, where's the labor in that? I don't know. Right. But the birth and death, yeah, you're right. When we're giving birth, it's baby's crying, it's messy, it's bloody, it's
screaming,
but I think you really got it when you said, yeah, it's the miracle of life. So that's what we're but the medicalization is what drives me crazy. And I feel like a birth advocate for is it's birth and death. They are too medicalized. And maybe you have stats on this, but I learned that 80% of people die in hospitals. And that's really sad to me, actually. Mm-hmm. Because we're in such a consciousness of having to survive. But I'm also not saying to die either, because babies will die. I've worked with some really intense, I say clients or cases where, such mystery in the death and how I can bring that soul connection to that family to me is so profound. And I've even worked with toddlers that have just went to bed and didn't wake up. And it's what do you do? And that feels really big in my body to say that because I have earth children and I could never imagine them falling asleep and never waking up. Oh my gosh.
I've interviewed a couple of people, not just babies, but children, not just toddlers, not like SIDS, but there was a woman on Nikki Mark whose 12-year-old went to bed and didn't wake up.
I think that's the podcast I found you on. Maybe there was one where I was whoa, it was so profound. But I feel in people's grief and suffering and profoundness, it really does bring us healing to hear these stories,
So what do you hear from these earthbound spirits about why are they choosing to come at this time? What makes them are they kind of looking through scrolling through their own little Rolodex up there being that's the work I need to do. I'm going to go into that.
Pretty much, actually. One time, a long time ago, I felt and maybe others have this, and it's, when we sense and know energy, it's a language. We're trying to put it into form, right? Put it into articulation here is tricky. And many, many years ago, when I was why are these babies being miscarried? And I saw almost an entrance room, a before place where it was looking down and going, you know what, that single mom right there, I'm coming to her, but I may leave because this is the thing we don't understand. And I try to make this clear. It's very confusing. It doesn't maybe make any logical sense, but babies and the souls, they're really just souls more than babies, right? their level of frequency of where they're at, there's no feelings of regret, fear, anger. There's no like, they don't know what that is. It just doesn't. I said, imagine something that doesn't exist there. And that's why the babies that I speak to and they connect, there's never anything evil or fearful or super harsh. Yeah, there may be energies and emotional things, but babies, even in birth loss, even through all kinds of birth losses, babies, you know, they just have love to share, I feel like. And what are they coming into the earth in this time? There was a slowdown. There is going to be a slowdown with the world of fertility, not just because of technologies, but because of consciousness. There will be slows. And I do feel like maybe that's why we do see infertility, is like there's something going on, because I've worked with women that they have no problems in their physiology and they can't have a baby. Like, what is that? And sometimes it is a deeper thing. And like this one woman.
So you feel like maybe it's a deeper kind of collective, I don't know if we'd call it collective conscious or higher power that is, I mean, we know that the birth rates are going down.
Yeah.
Some by choice, because I think a lot of people are like, what am I bringing a child into right now? But it sounds like also maybe by design. I
like the design. Yeah. There's, because every being that comes through is coming at a certain frequency and they're coming to connect. And it's not even like, oh, well, everybody's in a different frequency and the babies are seeing opportunities to come, and it is slowing down because there's almost like, how are we coming in? What does that look like? And every soul that's coming in right now, it has a purpose to restructure this reality, right? More than ever. Like I talk about the earth grids. There's a woman in pregnancy. I've never seen this before. The baby took me to like Antarctica and Arctica, and I'm like, what's happening? And it's like, I'm coming now in her body to do this. And I'm like, you're doing it right now. Okay. and it was like,
what's the baby doing?
Working with the earth grids from the top to the bottom of the earth to work with the healing of it. I mean, there's so much more details that I don't even understand, but I don't get messages like that typically, but that just happened recently. And it's making me go, wow, these children, they're not just coming into their families to, oh, let's just work on, you know, having a happy family, or we'll work on your lineage, which can be a part of it. But it's like, what about the collective energy? When children come in, like we don't own our children. They're sovereign souls, and they come with a mission. And, you know, we can tune in and see like, what is this child doing? And sometimes we have to just play the world together with them and see who they become and do the best we can with our own stuff. But like when we keep the intimate,
I think a lot of the mission of how you learn is knowing that they are not yours to own and control.
Yes. And how do we then, you know, give space for that? For maybe you have a child that's like, you know, oh gosh, they're so combative or they're such a fighter. I'm like, is that really true? Or is their earth mission more of a protector of this earth? So they're going to have to, you know, shift and understand their energy in a certain way. And I've done, it's not on my website, but I've done like children's readings after when people feel like they're struggling with their child or teenager. And it's like, well, who are they? Like, let's see their mission. Like, what is the energy? How do they feel, sense the world? And how can you just love it and then use their energy and power in a positive way, instead of like, oh, they're a problem, let's put them on medication, or let's do, you know, oh, they're the problem. Anytime anyone says a kid's a problem in the family, I'm like, it's usually the parents. I'm sorry. It's not. The kid is not the problem. It's very rare. It's like, what is the energy of the parent is being activated to do their work, right? And then to listen to, because the children, the children are the freaking future. We have to be like, that to me is really big deal, because we're not going to be here, you know? And what are they set up with, and how are they intuitive, prepared on some level to advocate for the new things and coming back to that positive timeline of this world, you know?
So what is a new earth child versus like an indigo child?
So I feel like New Earth Child, I define it so differently. I actually have a list in my book, but I can't, like, I don't remember my list right now.
I have it.
But, okay, a little bit. Okay. Indigo children. So they came in the 50s, right? This is what the sound, this is the conversation we've had, right? This, I don't know if that's what you heard. But I feel like there's different waves of children, right? Crystal children, rainbow children, new earth children, gold children, opal children. Like it really depends because there's such intergalactic energies in those, right? And I feel like we're always moving through new levels of children. Yeah. What are you going to say?
So like what constitutes all those different things? Like what if you say here, a new earth child is on a personal mission with their own agenda, karma free, and the embodiment of pure love, a frequency that vibrates purity, an empath in a positive and sensitive trauma free way, an electromagnetic disruptor to change matter, deep minded and with a heart capacity that is limitless, a natural intuitive and psychic in a matter of fact way, capable of receiving interdimensional truths and light language effortlessly, born with remembrance and wisdom to share.
So what I've noticed from New Earth children is it's almost like they don't have a care about the past, which I think is excellent because a lot of us carry way too much stuff from the past and we're like just kind of, sifting it through, working. And these children, they don't have to come in with the burden and the material of our reality. They really don't actually. And I actually witnessed it with two of my children. And my older one, he's taken on a lot of this story. But my other one, I'm like, is like almost a mystery to me. I was like, how can someone be trauma-free and very present and just literally not even sick? Like just moves through it. It's like, it's not even a thing. And I can see the new future, like where sickness and disease aren't going to be like they are now. It's just going to be like a whole other level. And it's just like, leaving the past behind. And I say karma free and also empath. There's a lot of sayings around empaths being super traumatized, right? There's this whole idea. But what about empathic children that have no trauma? Is that can we sustain that in this reality? And of course, if I'm thinking of going back to indigo children, it was just a different wave of energy to really wake people up that there's these children, adults that have more of a violet light in their crown, and don't quote me on that. It's not my area. But when I was in my 20s, I had a few different people say that they suggested I was an indigo, but I don't really know. I don't know if I connected with that in that way because they're a system buster and they're speaking up. And back in my 20s, I was hiding. I was scared of all this, so I didn't even know.
So you're really talking about perhaps a frequency with which they come in.
There you go.
So
yeah.
I guess if you just have, and then I feel like a lot of people get really wedded to wanting their kid to be that, right? Like, oh, I have maybe you'd say a new earth kid or indigo child, or my kid's an old soul, or this or that. And I'll never forget, I've said this before, Brian Weiss, years ago when I took one of his courses, and he said, we all talk about old souls being this great thing, but why do they keep coming back? They're clearly, we think that they are coming with such wisdom, but maybe they keep coming back because they're not quite getting it. And maybe it's the new souls that are really the souls that are really much wiser. But I think there's almost then there becomes some sort of ego attachment to the type of child you have, as if they're some spiritually evolved soul.
Here, I'll make it really
chosen to have this spiritually evolved child.
I'll make it really easy. Any child that's being born right now is going to be a New Earth child. There's no separation. If you're coming to be born in this time and very less fertility, you're a New Earth child. That's how I see it and perceive it. Someone doesn't come to me and say, is this a New Earth child? Well, you're pregnant. Yes. I don't have to be psychic to look into that. I already know that's how it is because the children are very different. And I see it. I see it through their form here. I tune in. I can feel the energy of children. They're just running around and where they are, where their thoughts are, and the younger children. But there's more. Yeah. So I feel
when did you feel that shift happened? When did New Earth children?
I feel probably in the past few years. Yeah. In the past few years, it became more and more clear because I feel we are expanding. And people are more light-bodied. And then that light body's hey, and the New Earth children energy is oh, this is our timing. We're just kind of coming through to keep elevating and clearing out the planet, the earth, and just creating those connections. So I don't use the word old soul or new soul. That's not in my language, because I think honestly in my 20s, when I started studying more outside, I was always told I was a new soul, and I was very embarrassed because I was like, no, I'm supposed to be old.
Right.
And people would hear me speak and say, you must be an old soul. I don't really have any comment about it, because I was like, there are, yeah. But who knows? I mean, everybody has a different philosophy, and the work that I do is through the lens. And I'm very clear about the philosophy of my own experience going into those realms and the frequency. And I know other spirit baby intuitives have different frequencies that they connect to, that they bring forward. Yeah.
What do you say to a family, whether it's mom, dad, two dads, two moms, who are having a hard time getting pregnant, and say, but I desperately want this, like this, why is this not coming to me? And feel like either they feel spiritually ashamed because they are maybe listening to this today and feeling like they're not bringing the right energy, or they did the wrong thing where it has to do with spirituality, or they're not deserving of it. Or if they could only shift their energy, then maybe they can bring a baby into the world. I do worry a little bit sometimes about that in this space, because I think people can get feel really spiritually ashamed.
Yeah, it's so much more than just shifting your energy. I mean, the women and men that come to me, they've done every spiritual tool, technique you can imagine. And sometimes that's where people come to me at that last space. But there's not one reason why, right? And sometimes people will not know the reason ever, actually, or they may kind of know, but they don't want to do it. Right. I work with a lot in fertility treatments. Like, some babies will come through embryo adoption, sperm donation, surrogacy. I've worked with them all. I've worked with all kinds of couples. There's not one thing. And that's a really big deal to me. This is why it's like, what is that individual story and what is it? And for me, it's in the moment of seeing what wants to unfold. But I know a lot of people want just that one thing. Like, well, if dad just loves himself more, I'm like, I wish it was that easy. Mm-hmm. It's layered. And when I've seen the women, I believe there's one, the story in my book where she had she had a trauma when she was young, and it physiologically got locked in her structure subconsciously. She didn't really know. And she didn't want to do intervention conception. There's a lot of push to do IVF right now. And women have to be really careful, because it can be very abused and it doesn't promise anything. Mm-hmm. So this is where I go deeper with people, like looking at their own personal connection. I'm not going to say don't do it. And it's all about natural. People have to follow their own vibration and frequency. And sometimes if the physical world is very palpable and that's a powerful energy, they're already in it. So they're going to have to go and see that path, right, and open towards it. So in this story with this woman,
and that's what you talk about with different timelines too, right?
Oh yeah, there's timelines for people that are like, oh my gosh, there's their baby, there's the pregnancy. Other times their field really, So it's kind of like, I don't promise anything mm-hmm. because you're a sovereign soul, or people like like for example, this happened. Hey, baby's gonna come. This feels really powerful. Working with someone a lot in this area. And she went on vacation and didn't have sex. I was like, what? So she changed the timeline. Like, there was a beautiful, gentle way we talked about it. I wasn't like, you're bad, look what you did, right? It's kind of like there was a lot of energy connected to her family that, so it was kind of like, okay.
So then it's like, what's coming up for you that can then be explored and cleared?
Yeah, just where are you at now with, building? And I do feel like, I have the clinical psychology background, somatic psychology. So I'm using that piece, but I'm also I'm also looking at the mediumship and the energy of baby. So sometimes I can sit in a space and we barely talk about baby energy, because it's the person wants to unpack a lot of stuff. And then it's like preparing the body, the vessel. And I've seen really amazing things happen with women in conception. Just because energy speaks to us doesn't mean we're not meant to do things physically. That's where women get really confused, I feel like, a lot. Well, I'm sitting here,
again,
like,
they think,
like, okay, so I'm sitting here in my frequency and I'm working with the energy, but nothing's happening. But I'm like, what if you're getting inspired thought to do something more physical, like an IUI or, exploring embryo adoption. Sometimes exploring, I feel like, opens up a portal of energy. It doesn't mean you're going to do it, but you're opening. For example, as I'm saying that, I just had this thought in my head. I had a woman, single conception by choice. And she really was she had a loss. She had IVF and it didn't work out. And we started working deeper on her own heart space of adoption. So all of a sudden she's like, I'm like number 1 million on the list. That's never going to happen. She got fostered for this little boy. And I believe she ended up adopting him later on. But her heart was so in love with this being. Guess what other phone call she got? We have another baby for you. It was like, you know what I'm saying? And so this, we see, so I tell women, like men, if you're like, it's okay to have intervention. It's like
I was just talking about this with girlfriends the other night. Yeah. I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about this woman who was on an adoption list for a long, long time, not coming up, decided to go down the route of surrogacy. I think it might be getting this out of the border, but you'll get it where I'm going with this. Ended up, the surrogate got pregnant, so they had that baby. Then an adoption came through, and then she got pregnant on her own.
Oh my gosh. That you get it. It's like the energy opens up something, and especially sometimes with adoption of children, and I call embryo adoptions could be similar. There's something that we just can't explain. But I really feel like I really want to put the trust back in women and men to feel into their intuition, to, even if they're like, but I don't know, it's okay to have fear and intuition. It's okay. And you may make choices out of fear. We all do as humans, but also just coming back. I'm really big into grounding and being in your body just enough. Then you feel like,
psychologist in you.
Yeah. Right? To come back enough so you can make a choice that it doesn't mean you're not going to be freaked out. I mean, you're going to be freaked. You're not supposed to be a robot, like, oh, I have no feelings. And intuition, as you know, it's just like a gentle breeze. It moves through the space and you just go with it. But if you're stressed out, if you're sick, if you're tired, I tell women these 3 areas, no, just sit back and relax. Like sometimes we have to get in the quiet.
Which is so hard to do. And I have so much empathy, when someone wants to get pregnant, wants to have a baby, right? It's like all you can think about and it feels like, well, but all my energy is focused on wanting that. So why isn't it happening for me?
And I tell women, like, there's okay with something I call healthy obsession, which is like, I knew when I was trying to conceive, every month I thought about it and it wasn't happening. But I was also like, is that really bad? Because we do have that. We feel it in our hearts. There's a baby, there's a connection, but I don't know what that means. And I think that women, I honestly don't feel like women give them enough time to conceive, like really sitting intentional, like even in preconception, like, who are you? Like as a person, like, what is that? And it's just this
is
fast,
the relationship
quick,
correct? Is it the right relationship for you to bring? Because I think so many people feel like there's a ticking time.
Yeah.
Right. And we're getting married later. And, I think there's so much information thrown at us about everything we're doing to our bodies. And this is involved in microplastics. And we ate too much of this as a kid and we were on the pill and like all of these things. And it gets in people's heads. How could it not?
Yeah. And I tell women, like, fine, you are on birth control. You have toxicities. You have past trauma. Guess what? Babies will still be born into your body. And that's the thing we have to be clear about, because a lot of women will feel like, well, I have trauma and that's why the baby's not coming, or this is this. And I go, that's why I feel like it's so layered. There's so many different pieces.
And that's the part where I worry a little, that people blame themselves, right? They go down the rabbit hole of like, it's my fault. This isn't happening to me. And if I only did X, Y, and Z.
They will. And that's why they come to you for support, to unwind it, because especially with miscarriage. Oh my gosh. I'd say like 99% of women will feel like they did something wrong. So it's almost like, let's put that in the space. Let's address that. But we have to put it on the back shelf, because that's your just love beingness of wanting this being. It's like, I think it's the perspective of it. If we look at it through a different lens, that there's a sense of acceptance. Like that's how you're going to feel. That's why I tell women when they have at least one birth loss, especially miscarriage or stillbirth, I said, everything after that's going to be more challenging. And they know that.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you're going to feel scared and unsure the whole pregnancy, the next pregnancy, and you're not going to know a lot of things. And I feel like that's where having healers and therapists are really beneficial, or bereavement groups, because other bereaved moms know how to help each other.
Right.
And I just, it's like affirming that now you're moving through that lens of, like if you had a death, especially, you're going to be looking really nervous that everything's dying around you. It's just like what we do, but then it's okay. Like, breathe through it and like love yourself. And I'm just thinking about the women I've supported, just bringing them back into their self-love and connection and being honest with how they're feeling. And what does that look like then? Maybe you need other support, like whether it's acupuncture. A lot of women will do acupuncture, and just getting some other energy to believe in them and connect with them is really powerful.
Well, Kelly, this is fascinating, this spirit connection. Your book, Notes from a Spirit Baby Medium. Tell us where people, I love the cover too. It's really beautiful.
I know. Thank you.
Where can people find your book, find out about you? I am sure that there are people listening who will probably reach out because they're struggling with their own, either they lost a baby or they're struggling with their own fertility issues. But where can they find you?
So the best place is my website, newearthchildren.com. And there is a way to access the book, but the book is available on Amazon and Ingram Spark. So it's globally available, and it's available on a lot of other different book platforms, as well as I have a paperback book. I have an ebook, and I have even a PDF on my website, because if you don't do ebooks, like come get the PDF. And at Spirit Baby Medium on Instagram, I like to pop in some beautiful messages and inspiration. I have Spirit Baby Oracle cards, not currently for sale, but I share the beautiful images on Instagram a lot. And yeah, that's the best way to reach me. And you can access me through email in there as well. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Kelly, thank you so much for your time today and for enlightening us about these little souls that are coming, all of them.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love it. I know I could keep going and going. I just got it's starting to snow outside where I am.
Oh, I was like,
yeah, that's what I was like.
Are you seeing baby souls? What's happening now?
No. Thank you. Yeah, this has been great.
Like what you heard today and want to hear more? Wondering what comes next and what it all means? Head over to Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Play, or anywhere you get your podcasts and hit subscribe. Also, if you could take a minute to rate and review my podcast, I would really appreciate it. Stay tuned as we continue to explore life, death, and the space between.